And once again, if you'd like to do the chant that we often do, it's a chant that we've been doing at the early morning sit at the center for, I think, maybe a couple decades now. Suffusion with the divine abidings, and sometimes we just call it the Four Quarters chant. And it's recognizing the power of simply bringing to mind these four skillful attitudes of the heart: loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy. Here in the chant, it's called gladness. And the last is equanimity, the fourth. And in the Buddhist tradition, these are called the Brahma Viharas, or the divine abodes, or the four beautiful qualities of the heart. It's just interesting, to imagine these being the predominant emotions where we navigate our lives with kindness and compassion and appreciative joy and equanimity. And the interesting question is, would that cover us? Like, would there be moments of our life where somehow one of these four attitudes wouldn't fit or wouldn't allow us to show up in a really beautiful, wholesome way? So let's do this chant together. I'll ring the bell and we can begin. I will abide, pervading one quarter, with a mind imbued with loving kindness. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth, so above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself. I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a mind imbued with loving kindness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. I will abide, pervading one quarter, with a mind imbued with compassion. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth, so above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself. I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a mind imbued with compassion, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. I will abide, pervading one quarter, with a mind imbued with gladness. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth, so above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself. I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a mind imbued with gladness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. I will abide, pervading one quarter, with a mind imbued with equanimity. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth, so above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself, I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a mind imbued with equanimity, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility, and without ill will. And take some time now and listen to the body, make any last adjustments, and we'll do our best to settle in to a posture that's relatively still, has some quality of uprightness that supports alertness in the mind. And just as important, the body is at ease. The body's invited to be relaxed and soft and at ease. So do what you can, establishing a helpful sitting posture. And then we need to let that be good enough, whatever it is. We don't want to spend the meditation period adjusting and trying to find just the right posture. Can the way we're sitting now be good enough? Supportive enough, pleasant enough? And we take the time in a way to grow roots into the moment by being willing to feel what's here to feel. And because we're studying this beautiful quality of patience these few weeks, let's really work on reforming our understanding of what it means to be patient, so that it's really seen as a beautiful and actually powerful quality of the heart, this capacity to show up in a patient way. It really arises out of this value of wanting to be in alignment with the way it is. So of course, we'll cultivate a patience because this moment right now, it's already this way. So whatever it is that we're experiencing in the body and the mind and heart, like if we're confused, or perhaps we can be patient with that confusion. Feel what the feeling is. Soften and relax with it. Because however it is for each of us right now, it's already this way. This experience is already, in a sense, here to be felt, to be allowed, to be open to. It's already too late to want things to be different, because it's like this now. So let's use this deepening sense of what patience is to learn how to be present with more stability, with a more embracing value of being connected with the experience that's here. And we can start with a traditional meditation object, this awareness of breathing in and awareness of breathing out. And remember, it isn't about controlling the breath. It's not like a yogic breathing practice where we're cultivating a particular kind of breath. We're aware of the breath as a natural phenomena that comes in and goes out. And we can, just one half breath at a time, see if we can be patient, patiently aware, patiently present, allowing the nature of the next in-breath to be the way it is from the beginning until its end. And then the nature of the next out-breath, allowing it to be the way that it is from the beginning until the end. So in a way, we're learning how to persevere or to endure just one in-breath or just one out-breath from the beginning to the end. How to be, in a way, intimate with nature, the nature of the breath, without neurotically needing to control it or judge it, dismiss it. How to be both intimate and to be allowing of each in-breath, each out-breath. Remember, it's the coming together of both a softness, a yielding, and a great clarity, seeing things as they are. And if you want to use a particular phrase to support this little training we're doing, where we're bringing awareness to the ordinary process of breathing in and out, and really checking out what patience looks like, feels like in relationship to breathing in and breathing out. So you can use the phrase patience with breathing in, breathing out with patience. Or you could just simply bring that word patience to mind as you notice the breathing in. And repeat that word patience in your mind as you feel the breath going out. Just a way of exploring what a wholesome understanding of patience, how that can support being present with this natural process of breathing in and breathing out. Let the nature of the breath be the way that it is. We can be grateful we don't have to manage or do the breathing. It can be a natural and automatic process. It doesn't have to be perfect or the way we think it should be. And then the last instruction, if you notice some kind of repeated distraction, then practice being patient with that tendency to be thinking about something or to be reacting in a particular way. In other words, what would patience look like, feel like in relationship to this distractedness? As if there's a lot of wise space that notices the mind's tendency to get distracted, to get irritated, or whatever it might be. Oh yeah, sometimes it's like this. That's the voice of patience. Sometimes it's like this. Can this be okay? Because it's already like this now. Can there be space, this wise space that understands, yeah, it's like this, feels like this. And allowing these distractions to come and go on their own not to feel like somebody's got to get in there and get rid of stuff. Let the distractions cease in that wise and patient space. Feel what's there to feel, any reverberations related to the distraction. And then begin again with this particular training of being patient with the inhalation and then with the exhalation. And we'll continue now in silence. Remember to be willing to begin again and again. We're developing or strengthening this new habit of patience. Patience is a kind of soft power to persist, to be interested in the way that it is. And we'll be sitting for another 2 minutes or so. And it's important to actually recognize these wholesome qualities of the heart and mind. It's actually how we strengthen wholesome qualities by clearly recognizing them in real time. So do your best to sense this capacity of patience, this capacity to be steadfast, to be soft and clear, kind of strength that allows the heart to stay connected with what's happening, whether we're aware of the breath coming in and going out, or aware of other phenomena, other qualities that are here in the moment. And even though there can be this tendency to want to see patience as a kind of passivity, it's not really the case. But patience does have this clarity that this moment, these conditions, the way it is in the body now, that it can't be other than the way it is right now. But that's not the same as passivity, it's just understanding that it's already this way. And an honest connection, a willingness to feel and to be present is the appropriate response. It's what leads to skillful action. And let's take a moment, adjust the body, make sure you're comfortable. And we'll be discussing today. Next week, Shelley Graff will be teaching. I'll be out on the West Coast in Washington State, leading a residential retreat at Cloud Mountain with Kamala Master. So Shelley Graff will be teaching next Sunday morning at 10:30. But then when I come back, we'll continue this discussion of patience for at least one more Sunday, probably that first Sunday in October. And as I mentioned last week, it's really felt like when we get a clearer sense of patience in our lives, it really does feel like a strength or a stability, something we can actually count on to protect us and just to help us through life. And in particular, the difficult, the dukkha, as some of you know that Pali word dukkha. A lot of times now we're not translating that word. When it does get translated, it's often translated as suffering or unsatisfactoriness. But it has more than that specific sense of like when my head hurts or when I'm feeling the pain of loss or all these ordinary experiences of dissatisfaction and unpleasantness. It's like there's something inherent in our human experience that we can't quite ever lock down happiness in that ordinary sense of having what we want and being away from what we don't want. I was talking to my partner about our retreat property we've been developing for a number of years, and in western Wisconsin there's deer ticks and Lyme's disease, and we got an email from one of our community members about them getting Lyme's disease probably out at the retreat property. And of course we've known about this for years, and it's just a good example of this deeper sense of dukkha. I mean, clearly it's an inconvenience when there are small animals, insects in this case, that like to suck blood and leave behind a virus. That's especially unnerving. But it's it's a real symbol of the underlying nature of life, that we can't sort of get rid of all the wrinkles and all the discomforts and all the irritants and all the threats. We have to somehow develop this patience, this ability to relax and soften into the reality of Lyme's disease and pandemics and irritating politicians and this and that and the other things. Let alone patience with our own mind, the conditioning of our own heart. One of the great insights of having a longer period of time where you don't have a lot of duties and responsibilities, like going on a Buddhist mindfulness retreat, Vipassana retreat, where you have that time, that space, and that relative simplicity, is we really see the conditioned nature of our mind to think in particular ways, to desire in particular ways, to react in particular ways. And in a way it drives us crazy, just because there's fewer outward distractions, like our computers and talking and the things we can fill up space with. We just see the mind doing what the mind does. And initially it's shocking. Like, why won't you shut up? On and on it goes. And it's like it has no shame. The kind of dramas that our mind, this part of the mind that keeps constructing stuff, that has no shame. It will construct whatever is provocative, because in a way the existential quality of being a self, being the sense of being a part, is we're really afraid of empty space. So that aspect of the mind does its best to fill up empty space any way it can. And then the wisdom awareness that we're developing begins to have a more honest and sincere and patient relationship to that ongoing, almost endless chatter, internal dialogue. And of course, sometimes that internal dialogue, might have the appearance of being skillful or at least somewhat reasonable, but not always. And the infuriating thing is that it just goes on and on. In the same way that Lyme's disease and all these other irritants, mosquitoes and flies, and can't eat what we want to eat because then the belly doesn't feel good, and it just goes on and on. There's something in the very nature of our human existence or embodied existence that is fundamentally unsatisfactory. And it isn't like somebody made a mistake, it's just the way that it is. And patience is really the balm, the healing, wholesome balm that really allows our heart to see this, connect with this, be with this truth of unsatisfactoriness. So last week, I spoke more about this basic perseverance with life. But this week, let's reflect about how patience can really help us in those places that are more strongly unpleasant, unsatisfactory, more difficult to be around. People we have to work with that we find really difficult to be around. Bodily conditions, whether it's due to aging or some illness or whatever, an injury, but bodily issues that we have to be with. We don't have a choice. Family members we have to be with, because they're family members, or some aspect of one particular family member, right? And then to really see these as places to develop patience, not as a fixed stance. I'm going to be patient with this person, or I'm going to be patient with this pain in my body, or I'm going to be patient with this world as it is. But to really see patience as having the soft power, a nimble, creative strength. And like anything related to this practice, a lot of times when our mind is more superficial and we don't really know much about the way things are, then we tend to want like an answer that the mind can get established with that just fixes everything. But one of the things an authentic spiritual inquiry reveals over time is there isn't an answer like that. There isn't like a set answer. One way that somebody made this point that I thought was particularly useful, like in terms of Buddhism and this path of awakening, it isn't so much that we become an awakened, enlightened being, as much as it is that we become somebody who has more and more moments of awakening, more and more moments of freedom. So there may be moments of freedom, but not some truth that makes me free forever. I'm free, my heart is unburdened, when in that moment there's enough wisdom to see clearly so that the heart, the mind, doesn't, out of habit, cling, grasp, react in a tight way. So when the supportive conditions are present, like that strength of patience, then there may be some relative freedom for us. And when there isn't patience in the next moment, then we'll be just one of the many suffering human beings, reacting in a tight way, using a fixed stance, clinging to some idea, some belief, to kind of survive, but at a real cost. Whenever we're using hardness, whenever we're justifying the squeeze of the heart to give us a sense of, like, I can handle what's coming at me, that comes with a cost. So I like, just because patience, often in the way it exists here in the English language, we often associate patience with kind of a tight presence, like I'm going to meet some difficult thing that's coming my way with an equal and opposite force, and I'll call that patience. But that's probably better that we call that resistance, which is in a way the opposite of patience, like creating what seems to us to be an equal and opposite force to keep the difficult away from me. That's reactivity, resistance, and the question to ask is, how is that working for us? Or how is that working for anybody, that resistance? It's totally understandable when we're surprised by some difficulty. Like when, just a simple example, when we stub our toe and there's that wave of pain, often the first instincts, habits that show up, or to resist the pain, like, oh, we sometimes even scream or dance around as a way of creating something to be aware of so we're not feeling the pain. So one of the ways you might see your practice showing up is that when you do have those kind of accidents where you hurt your body, not in a deadly way, but just in a way that really hurts, you might notice that you don't bother with the screaming or the dance. You just, in a way, sit down and go, whoa, this really hurts. Can I be with this? Can I be patiently aware, knowing that this wave of pain, of unpleasantness, it will eventually peak and begin to diminish. And running from it is just another layer of stress. It's already painful. So maybe I'll just see if I can endure this with a kind of strength that is both soft and clear. Clear in the sense of, I'm not going to bother to distance myself from this unpleasantness. Now, we can't always do that. It really, in any moment, depends on the capacity of wisdom in that moment, or both maybe wisdom and faith, which are related qualities in the heart and mind. The faith, the confidence really comes from having in the past turned toward the difficulty, the pain, and realized, oh, it feels like this. And the interesting thing about pain, whether it's emotional or existential, excuse me, or physical pain, often what's harder to be with more than the actual ouch of whatever is showing up in our life is the story we have about the ouch. Like the idea that this ouch will kill me if I feel it. That actually tends to be more challenging than the unpleasantness of the loss or the unpleasantness of having bumped my head or whatever it is. And just to be curious about that, like, can I be with this? That's a sincere question. So this week, next couple weeks, because I won't be back for 2 weeks now, this could be our homework around patience. Just to be on the lookout, not the most painful thing that's showing up, but some of the moderately painful things that are showing up. And just to be curious, I wonder what patience would look like, be like, feel like in this moment when it's like this. What would a wise, soft patience be? Oh, somebody betrayed me. They didn't do what they said they were going to do, and it really hurts. Okay. I like when the tendency of my mind is to leak into revenge fantasies. Like, we're wise, so we're not going to go imagine we're going to go like, harm that person. But it's sort of like for a Buddhist, a revenge fantasy is, well, karma's going to catch up with them. They can't get away with this. Karma is totally on top of this. People who do things like that, what goes around comes around, and I just have to wait. But that's just a Buddhist version of a revenge fantasy, and if we actually felt what that feels like in our heart at the time we're thinking that and feeling that, we would realize, oh, that's, that drama of the revenge fantasy may create a sense of distance from the pain of betrayal or being insulted. But the distancing ourselves with some idea like that is itself stress. So we're using stress to avoid feeling stress. And the stress we're avoiding, it didn't go away. We're just not paying attention to it because we're paying attention to another drama, our revenge fantasy. So all these ways of distracting ourselves from the ordinary and inevitable painful things that happen, they're really counterproductive. Understandable, because we don't know, we don't have confidence and maybe the wise skill to trust just being with the pain that comes our way in life, whether it's emotional or physical. But we can develop the faith, the confidence, and the skill, but we have to practice. And so that's why, when we go through these paramis, these 10 beautiful qualities of the heart, like patience being one of them, we're right in the middle of this list, if any of you are here for one of the first times, that you can always go back to either on dharmaseed.org or on our Common Ground Meditation Center's YouTube channel, and all these talks on the paramis are there to listen to and watch. But, we can develop these qualities. And as I mentioned in the guided meditation, the easiest way to develop wholesome qualities is to recognize wholesome qualities. And, not all of us, but many of us tend to have more of a critical mind. We're just so much better at noticing what we're not good at and other people, what they're not good at, than what is beautiful and wholesome. But we can learn that too. And that's part of the reason we're taking the time to go through these 10 beautiful qualities of the heart. And remember, in the document that I put out, it has a number of resources for those who have time to do a little study, some really good books and articles, both on the 10 qualities and specifically on patience. So you can check that out if you're interested. And, we have this, and it's often the case, we understand things in a superficial way. So we have an image, probably all of us, in our mind of what someone who's patient looks like. That calm, just the way the eyes are. Somebody who's patient has that sense of release. But that doesn't mean, like, when we're wisely patient, and there's all kinds of things going on internally and externally that are activating tendencies, there may be a lot moving in our heart, in our body, in our mind. But if we're being patient with that, then it may look like nothing's happening. Outwardly watching somebody who has a lot of this capacity to be patient with what's difficult, they may seem like, well, nothing bad is happening to you because you seem so released, you seem so calm, you seem so at ease, so I guess nothing bad's happening. But that could be a very wrong assumption. They may be dealing with really difficult stuff. And there's a simile in the tradition. I'm sure some of you have heard this. I really like it. I think it's an important one of these stories or similes to remember. And it's the simile, it's often referred to as the simile of the salt crystal. Back at the time of the Buddha, they didn't have a salt shaker with those nice little crystals, right? Somebody who visited the ocean would have got one of those big crystals of salt, and then you'd break off a little bit and grind it down when you needed it for your curry or whatever. So the story goes like this: if you take a big crystal hunk of salt and you put it in a little bit of water, well, that water is going to be ruined. You're not going to be able to drink it, right? But if you take that same salt crystal and you put it in a huge body of water like Lake Superior, well, you're not going to notice the water's not really affected in any significant way. And it's the same way. This is an image for what wisdom, and especially patient wisdom. And wisdom, patience has both the qualities of wisdom and compassion. But it's like this vast space. So karma, the fruits of actions in the past and the karma of the world, when tsunamis arise, all karma means is the lawfulness of what's unfolding. Whether it's an asteroid hitting the planet or a mosquito hovering around me, karma. It's the lawful unfolding of causes and conditions. Some of what unfolds is personal in a sense to my own conditioning. You do this to me, that triggers a reaction based on my personal conditioning to be defensive when you treat me that way, for example. So, but if we understand the simile of the salt crystal, then we're kind of holding the possibility that all this stuff showing up, which is lawful, can't be otherwise, given karma, the law of karma, the law of causes and conditions. This is going to be this way because there are causes and conditions leading this to be this way right now. That's why I said in the guided sit, it can be very grounding to realize that this moment can't be other than the way it is. Given the complex web of causes and conditions, this person is treating me this way right now. Doesn't mean that it's skillful the way this person is treating me, or that they have permission to treat me this way, or that I shouldn't say something or do something. It just means that this is a natural, lawful unfolding of this amazing web of causes and conditions. It's lawful. So this understanding is part of being able to meet our lives, all the ups and downs, with that vast space of patience. Oh yeah, it is like this now. That I know. I may not know the causes and conditions, like why, how it got to be this way, but I do know it's this way. And I do know that wherever I have studied and looked, this way is always the result of causes and conditions. There's no other way that something shows up if there aren't causes for that something to show up. Things don't just drop in from outer space, and then this person is treating me this way. And it really changes. Like, you'll see if you keep this in mind, that everything has causes and conditions. So like, for example, next time you read the news or listen to the news, and as you're hearing about all the stuff that's going on and all the way that greed and hatred operates in our world, and just the terrible things that happen to people, and hopefully a few beautiful things too, but we're watching the news, but we're listening to the news with this vast space that understands the lawfulness. And a lot of people think of this, wrongly hear this, or think of this as a kind of detached, nothing I can do. And a way of justifying not caring. But it's really a way to get close. So given that I do care, given that I do have this empathetic connection with your happiness and with your sorrow, my own happiness and my own sorrow, and given that I understand that there is this complex web of causes and conditions, that I'm not able to just snap my fingers and change things, it really affects how we participate, how we show up. We show up with a lot more wisdom. And you know what? We show up with a lot more resilience. Because if we don't have that understanding, then we can have this wrong understanding that if I just lean in, if I just get intense in my showing up, I'll be able to bend things in the way I think they should be. And then when our relationships with our partners don't change, or relationship with our children don't change, or our relationship with our body doesn't change, or the way the world is unfolding doesn't change, then we feel betrayed. And then we can get real nihilistic, like nothing matters, I don't care. I might as well just play video games, for the rest of my life, and I'll just take the satisfaction of getting good at video games. I mean, it's amazing when we really are honest with ourselves how we fill up a lot of our time. It's really an expression of this nihilism, of thinking that there isn't a creative, nimble, powerful way to show up. So we need to reform the idea of patience from being sort of a dead, helpless presence to being this very creative way to manage, especially pain and the ordinary and unavoidable pain that comes with life. And it's like one way, that word waiting, like I'm waiting, is often associated with patience. And there is something about, the thing about waiting is it's a really nimble, dynamic, potent place. It's like we have all these wholesome intentions to heal, to help, to see clearly, to deepen understanding. And we're willing to just patiently wait until there's a moment where skill, wholesomeness, can flow. But in those moments where we're confused or it's not clear how to be skillful, we're totally willing to wait until clarity returns. And for a moment, maybe it's just for a moment, we feel like, oh, I think it's skillful to say this, to do this. And then we'll sense, like as we say it and do it, we'll sense, like, was that helpful? So we're not stopping paying attention just because we got the green light to act. So again, patience isn't the stance, okay, this place in my life I'm being patient, and then so I don't really have to pay attention because I've already determined that this place in my life is a place for patience. Well, it might be generally true that there's a lot of confusion here or a lot of need to be patient. But the patience is really meant to be this dynamic place so that as soon as action is necessary and appropriate, the green light is already ready to sort of move. It isn't like a plan, okay, yeah,